Have you ever wondered what it was really like to live as a knight in medieval times? Not the fairy tale version, but the gritty, raw reality of donning heavy armor, riding into battle, and living by a code that demanded everything: loyalty, bravery, and sometimes even your life. Knights were the superheroes of their age, admired and feared in equal measure. But beyond the shining armor and legendary tales lay a life of relentless training, brutal combat, and complex loyalties. Today, we're peeling back the layers of myth to uncover the truth about what it meant to be a knight. What drove these warriors to dedicate their lives to a code of honor? How did they balance the harshness of battle with the expectations of nobility? And what was the cost of living such a demanding life? Stick around, because the answers may just surprise you. Knighthood wasn't a career you chose. It was one you were born into. Most knights came from noble families, and their journey began at a very young age. Imagine being just 7 years old, leaving your family home to serve as a page in another noble's castle. As a page, your life was anything but easy. Your days were filled with training, learning to ride horses, wield wooden swords, and master the art of courtly manners. But don't let the idea of manners fool you. This wasn't just about saying please and thank you. Pages were trained to navigate the political games of the court, where a wrong word could lead to ruin. By the time you turned 14, you'd become a squire. Now, the real training began. You'd shadow a knight, watching him fight, care for his weapons, and prepare for war. It was grueling work, polishing armor until it gleamed, sharpening swords, and ensuring that your knight's horse was battle-ready. Knighthood itself was a reward, often bestowed in a ceremonial dubbing. Kneeling before your lord, you'd feel the flat of a sword tap your shoulders. But this wasn't just a title, it was a lifetime commitment to a code of honor that would define every action you took. Armor is the image that immediately comes to mind when we think of knights, but wearing it wasn't as simple as donning a suit. Each piece was painstakingly crafted by blacksmiths to fit the knight perfectly, a process that could take months. A full suit of armor weighed anywhere between 45 and 60 pounds. It was a marvel of engineering, designed to provide maximum protection while allowing the knight to remain mobile. But wearing it was an ordeal. Imagine the claustrophobia of being encased in steel, with limited vision through the narrow slits of your helmet. Breathing could be a challenge, especially during combat. And yet, this armor saved lives. It could deflect sword blows, arrows, and even the crushing weight of a mace, but it wasn't invincible. A well-placed dagger to the joints or neck could still bring a knight down. When knights weren't fighting, their lives were far from idle. Managing an estate was a significant part of a knight's duties. This included overseeing agriculture, collecting taxes, and resolving disputes among peasants. Knights were also enforcers of law and order in their lord's domain. They dealt with bandits, maintained roads, and ensured the safety of travelers. But justice wasn't always fair. Knights were expected to prioritize the interests of their lords over those of commoners, which often led to moral dilemmas. Faith played a central role in a knight's life. Each day began and ended with prayers. Churches and chapels were places of solace and reflection, where knights sought forgiveness for the lives they took and the sins they committed. But knights weren't all work and no play. Feasts and tournaments provided opportunities to showcase their skills and socialize. These events were a mix of celebration and competition, with knights vying for glory and the favor of nobles. The code of chivalry is often painted as a flawless set of rules that knights followed without question, a moral compass guiding their every action. But in truth, it was as much a guideline as it was an aspiration. Knights swore to protect the weak, serve their lords with unwavering loyalty, and uphold justice. On paper, it sounded noble. In practice, it was anything but straightforward. Imagine being a knight torn between two equally demanding roles, a protector of the innocent and an enforcer of your lord's will. Loyalty to your lord often came first, even if his orders led to war against another noble or the destruction of villages filled with people you were sworn to protect. Could you reconcile these duties with your oath to safeguard the vulnerable? Protecting the weak also wasn't as simple as rushing to save a damsel in distress. Knights lived in a world where feudal politics dictated morality. Justice was rarely blind. It was influenced by wealth, power, and alliances. Upholding the ideals of chivalry in such a world often meant making painful compromises. This contradiction, the struggle between duty, morality, and personal ambition, is what made knights profoundly human. They weren't just warriors in shining armor, but flawed individuals grappling with choices in a world where ideals and reality were seldom aligned. War was the ultimate proving ground for a knight. Picture a medieval battlefield, the thunder of hooves, the clash of steel, and the screams of the wounded. Knights were the elite soldiers of their time, often leading the charge into battle. But the reality of combat was far from glamorous. It was chaotic, brutal, and unforgiving. A single mistake, a misjudged strike, a stumble in the mud could mean death. Knights fought not just with swords, but also with lances, maces, and axes. Each weapon had its purpose. Lances were used in the initial charge, designed to break enemy lines. Swords and maces came into play during the melee, where the fighting was up close and personal. Survival on the battlefield required more than strength. It demanded strategy, quick thinking, and a little bit of luck. And even for those who survived, the physical and emotional scars could last a lifetime. When knights weren't at war, they competed in tournaments. These events were more than just entertainment. They were a way for knights to hone their skills and earn fame. Jousting was the centerpiece of most tournaments. Imagine galloping at full speed, aiming a lance at your opponent while bracing for the impact. Victory brought honor, but the risks were immense. Broken bones and concussions were common, and some knights even died in these events. Tournaments also included melee battles, where teams of knights fought in chaotic mock battles. These were anything but safe. The line between sport and real combat was often blurred, and injuries were frequent. Despite the risks, tournaments were a highlight of a knight's life. They were a chance to showcase bravery, win prizes, and perhaps catch the eye of a noble lady. By the late Middle Ages, the once glorious role of knights began to wane. The battlefield, once dominated by heavily armored warriors on horseback, was evolving rapidly. Professional armies, made up of well-trained foot soldiers and mercenaries, began to replace feudal levies. At the same time, advancements in weaponry reshaped the dynamics of warfare. Take the longbow, for instance, a weapon that revolutionized combat. Skilled archers could shoot arrows with incredible speed and precision, piercing through a knight's armor from a distance. Then came gunpowder, an invention that changed everything. Cannons and firearms rendered castles vulnerable and made even the most fortified armor obsolete. The knight, once the epitome of martial power, was no longer invincible. Yet the ideals of knighthood endured. The concepts of honor, loyalty, and bravery, values that knights were expected to uphold, continued to resonate long after the era of armored warriors had passed. These ideals seeped into literature, art, and culture, shaping how we perceive heroism today. Even now, the term knight evokes images of someone noble, courageous, and selfless. While their armor may have rusted away, the spirit of knighthood remains timeless, reminding us that true strength lies not just in battle, but in the values we choose to live by. Let's step away from the battlefield and tournaments for a moment. What did an ordinary day look like for a knight? Mornings often began with prayer, followed by a hearty breakfast. Training was a daily ritual, whether it was sparring, horseback riding, or practicing with weapons. Afternoons were spent managing estates or attending to the needs of their lord. Evenings could be a mix of socializing and strategizing. Feasts were common, especially during peaceful times, where knights shared stories and planned future campaigns. But knights were human too. They felt fear, joy, and sorrow. They worried about their families, mourned fallen comrades, and longed for peace in a world dominated by conflict. Knights were more than just warriors. They were symbols of a bygone era, embodying the best and worst of their time. Their lives were a blend of glory and hardship, faith and conflict, duty and ambition. As you reflect on their journey, ask yourself, could you have lived their life? Could you have endured the weight of armor, the chaos of battle, and the unyielding demands of chivalry? If you're as fascinated by history as we are, don't forget to subscribe to Histoyarn. Together, we'll keep uncovering the stories that shaped our world. Until next time, stay curious and keep exploring.